Unicode Character Converter, Character to Unicode Decimal and Unicode Decimal to Character. January 8, 2023. This is the properly formatted code snippet of the Java program Unicode Character Converter that I created the day before yesterday. In the previous episode, I introduced a Java program ASCII text-to-code converter created on the same day. ASCII text-to-code converter is syntactically simple and serves the sole purpose of converting each character of any string literal, which is read as user input in the console, to their corresponding ASCII value. Compared to ASCII text-to-code converter, Unicode Character Converter is more syntactically complex, has a graphical user interface with swing components, and serves the purpose of converting any single character to its corresponding Unicode decimal, and converting any Unicode decimal to its corresponding character. In the following paragraphs, I am going to expound the syntactic details of this program. In the beginning of the properly formatted code snippet of this Java program, 3 classes in the java.hot package, 4 classes in the java.odd.event package, 1 class in the java.text package, 10 classes in the javx.swing package, 2 classes in the javx.swing.event package, and 1 class in the javx.swing.text package were imported. Then, I typed public class, the name of the public class Unicode Character Converter, and an opening curly bracket, after which I defined method main, in the body of which I typed the rest of the code of this program. In the beginning of the body of method main, I instantiated multiple objects as well as arrays of objects. Firstly, I instantiated a frame object, which acts as a container for the other swing components. Then, I instantiated a font object with the string name of Times New Roman, a style of the plain style constant, and a point size of 23. I named this font object as font for component. Then, I instantiated another font object with the string name of Microsoft GUI, a style of the plain style constant, and a point size of 25. I named this font object as font for text. Next, I instantiated multiple arrays of swing components consecutively, an array of button objects with a length of 2, an array of label objects with a length of 4, an array of panel objects with a length of 2, and an array of radio button objects with a length of 2. After instantiating multiple arrays of swing components consecutively, I instantiated a button group object. Then, I instantiated a text field object. Next, I instantiated a number format object without using the new keyword. I found out that the getInteger instance method in the number format class returns an integer number format for the current default format locale. Invoking this method, I assigned the returned integer number format to the number format object. I also found out that the setGrouping method in the number format class sets whether or not grouping is used in this format. Invoking this method, I set it to false so that grouping is not used, which means that no comma is placed every third digit to the left of the decimal point. Next, I instantiated a number formatter object, and pass the number format object as a parameter to the number formatter object. I found out that the set allows invalid method in the number formatter class sets whether or not the value being edited is allowed to be invalid for a length of time. Invoking this method, I set it to false so that it is not permitted to enter any character that does not correspond to the number formatter object, which is a parameter that can be passed to a formatted text field object. Therefore, I instantiated a formatted text field object, and pass the number formatter object as its parameter. Next, I instantiated an array of text pane objects with a length of 2. Then, I declared a for loop, in the body of which I typed a considerable portion of the code of this program. I declared this for loop with an initialization of an int value of the index I being 0, a condition of I being less than 2, and an iteration of I with the post increment operator ++. In the beginning of the body of this for loop, I instantiated each of the 2 button objects by iterating I. Then, I added an action listener to each of the button object by iterating I. Within the inherited abstract method action performed in this action listener interface, I defined an if-else statement, in the bodies of which I define many statements. For the condition of the if block, I invoked the getSource method, after the instance variable denoted by the letter E at default, to return the object on which the event initially occurred, and assigned it to the button object at array index 0. In the body of the if block, invoking the setText method, I set the text of the text field object to the specified text of an empty string literal. Invoking the setValue method and passing null as a parameter, I set the value of the formatted text field to null. It turns out that setText does not work for the purpose of setting the text of the formatted text field object to an empty string. Next, I declared another for loop with the same initialization, condition and iteration as those of the for loop declared above. In the body of this for loop, invoking the setText method, I set the text of each text pane object to the specified text of an empty string literal by iterating I. In the body of the else block, I defined a try-catch statement. In the try block, I defined an if-else-if statement. For the condition of the if block, I invoked the isEnabled method for the text field object. In the body of the if block, I declared a string object named textString. Invoking the getText method in the text component class, the statement returned the text image contained in the text field component, and I assigned the string literal of textString to the value returned from the text contained in the text field component. Then, I declared another for loop with an initialization of an int value of the index I being 0, a condition of I being less than the length of textString, and an iteration of I with the post increment operator ++. In the body of this for loop, I declared an integer array with the length of textString. I invoked the codePoint method at the specified index of I and assigned each returned value to each integer object by iterating I. I instantiated a string object and assigned each string literal, which represents each integer object, returned from the toString method to the string object by iterating I. Invoking the setText method and passing the string object, I set the text of the first text pane object to the string literal. For the condition of the else-if block, I invoked the isEnabled method for the formatted text field object. I instantiated a string object named ASCII_string. In the body of the else-if block, I invoked the getText method in the text component class. The statement returned the text contained in the formatted text field component, and I assigned the string literal of ASCII_string to the value returned from the text contained in the formatted text field component. I instantiated an integer object, and assigned this integer object the value returned by invoking the parseInt method, which parsed the string argument as a signed decimal integer, and passing ASCII_string. Invoking the toChars method and passing this integer object, I passed the value returned from this method as a parameter to the value of method in the string class, and then invoked the setText method to return a string literal, so as to set the text of the second text pane object to the string literal. I found out that the user might circumvent the limits of entering no more than one single character in the text field object and entering no non-numeric value in the formatted text field object by copying any invalid string literal and pasting it into either text component. In order to resolve this issue, I tried to catch a legal argument exception. In the catch block, invoking the showMessage dialog method in the jOption pane class, passing the value null to parent component, entering a string literal for message, another string literal for title, and choosing error_message as its message type, I defined a statement that brings up a dialog that displays an error occurred. Please try again. Each time a legal argument exception is thrown and caught. Since number format exception is a subclass of illegal argument exception, the dialog is also brought up each time number format exception is thrown and caught. After I finished the catch block, I defined quite a few more statements by iterating I within the first for loop. Invoking the setFocusable method and passing value false, I set the focusable state of each of the two button objects by iterating I. Invoking the setFont method and passing font for component, I set the font for each of the two button objects by iterating I. Invoking the add method, I appended both button objects to the frame object, which acts as a container for the other swing components. By iterating I instantiated each of the two radio button objects by iterating I added an action listener to each of the two radio button objects. Within the action performed action event method, I defined an if-else statement. For the condition of the if block, I invoked the getSource method to return the object on which this action event initially occurred, and assign the returned value to the first radio button object. In the body of the if block, I invoked the setEnabled method and passing the value true so that both the text field object and the formatted text field object were set to be enabled. In the body of the else block, I invoked the setEnabled method and passing the value false so that neither the text field object and the formatted text field object was set to be enabled. Invoking the setFocusable method and passing value false, I set the focusable state of each of the two radio button objects by iterating I. Invoking the add method, I added both radio button objects to the button group object by iterating I instantiated each of the two text pane objects by iterating invoking the set background method and passing color.light_gray. I set the background color to light gray for each of the two text pane objects by iterating I invoked the set editable method and passed the value false so that neither of the text pane objects should be editable. By iterating I invoking the set font method and passing font for text. I set the font for each of the two text pane objects by iterating I invoking the set preferred size method and instantiating a dimension object of 340. Without naming it, I set the preferred size of each of the two text pane objects by iterating I instantiated each of the two panel objects by iterating I invoking the add method. I appended the first radio button object to the first panel object, and the second radio button object to the second panel object. I also appended both panel objects to the frame object, which acts as a container for the other swing components. In addition, it should be noted that the integer class is a wrapper class that wraps the primitive type int. It turns out that the advantage of using wrapper classes instead of their corresponding primitive types is that certain methods such as toString, parseInt and parseDouble are only accessible via wrapper classes. After I defined all the necessary statements within the first for loop, invoking the setBounce method, I moved and resized the two button objects separately. Invoking the setText method, I set the text of the first button object to clear, and the second button object to convert. Then, I declared another for loop with an initialization of an int value of the index I being 0, a condition of I being less than 4, and an iteration of I with the post increment operator ++. I instantiated each of the forgeable objects by iterating I. Invoking the setFont method, I set the font for the forgeable objects by iterating I. Invoking the add method for the frame object, I added the forgeable objects to the container by iterating I. Next, invoking the setBounce method and passing 4 parameters of int value, I moved and resized the forgeable objects separately. Invoking the setText method and passing string literals, I set the text of the forgeable objects separately. Invoking the setSelected method and passing the value true, I set the state of the first radio button object to selected. Invoking the setText method, I set the text of the first radio button object to char to code, and the second radio button object to code to char. I added a document listener and a key listener to the text field object, as well as a key listener to the formatted text field object. I am going to expound the syntactic details regarding document listener in the penultimate paragraph. Within the inherited abstract method insert update document event t, in the document listener interface, I defined an if statement. For the condition of the if block, I defined it so that the length of the string literal returned by invoking the getText method for the text field object is greater than 1. In the body of the if block, I invoked the show message dialog to display the error message mentioned above. Within the inherited abstract method keyTyped key event t, in the key listener with a newly constructed key adapter and an instance of the event denoted by the letter E at default, I defined an if statement. For the condition of the if block, I defined it so that the length of the string literal returned by invoking the getText method for the text field object is greater than 0. In the body of the if block, I invoked the consume method for E so that no more than one character could be entered in the text field object at a time. Invoking the setFont method and passing font for text, I set the font for the text field object. Invoking the setPreferred size method and instantiating a dimension object of 340. Without naming it, I set the preferred size of the text field object. For the formatted text field object, I also added a key listener with a newly constructed key adapter and an instance of the event denoted by the letter E at default. Within the keyTyped key event t method, I defined an if statement. For the condition of the if block, I defined it so that the length of the string literal returned by invoking the getText method for the text field object is greater than 5. In the body of the if block, I invoked the consume method for E so that no more than 5 characters could be entered in the formatted text field object at a time. Invoking the setEnabled method and passing the value false, I set the formatted text field object to be not enabled. Invoking the setFont method and passing font for text, I set the font for the formatted text field object. Invoking the setPreferred size method and instantiating a dimension object of 340. Without naming it, I set the preferred size of the formatted text field object to a width of 300 pixels and a height of 40 pixels. For each of the two panel objects, invoking the add method, I appended the text field object and the first text pane object to the first panel object, and the formatted text field object and the second text pane object to the second panel object. Invoking the setBounds method and passing 4 parameters of int value, I moved and resized these two panel objects separately. For the frame object that acts as a container for the other swing components, I invoked multiple methods consecutively. Invoking the setDefaultClose operation method and passing exit_on_close, I set the exit application default window close operation that happens when the user initiates a close on this frame object. Invoking the setLayout method and passing the value null, I set the layout manager of the frame object to null. Invoking the setResizable method and passing the value false, I set the frame object to be not resizable by the user. Invoking the setSize method and passing 600, I resize this frame object so that it has a width of 600 pixels and a height of 600 pixels. Invoking the setTitle method, I set the title Unicode Character Converter for the frame object. The frame object is shown upon compiling and running this program by invoking the setVisible method and passing the value true. The output of this program is that upon compiling and running this Java program, a window titled Unicode Character Converter appears, in which 2 white blank spaces and 2 light gray blank spaces, the text character before the first white blank space, the text Unicode demical before the first light gray blank space, the text Unicode demical before the second white blank space, the text character before the second light gray blank space, a radio button with the text char to code, another radio button with the text code to char, one button with the text clear, and another button with the text convert are displayed. It is possible to enter only one single alphanumeric character in the first white blank space, but it is possible to enter 6 numeric characters in the second white blank space, since it is reputed that the Unicode standard contains 149,186 characters. Attempting to enter any non-numeric value in the second white blank space results in the beep sound that can be reproduced by the beep method in the getDefaultToolkit method in the Toolkit class. Clicking the click button results in the removal of any text present in any of the 4 blank spaces. If the radio button char to code is selected, clicking the convert button results in the conversion of a single character to its corresponding Unicode decimal, whereas if the radio button code to char is selected, clicking the convert button results in the conversion of a Unicode decimal to its corresponding character. Sometimes, a single character in a rectangular shape might appear as a result of the conversion from code to char. Additionally, when char to code is selected, the first white blank space becomes usable but the second white blank space becomes unusable. Whereas when code to char is selected, the second white blank space becomes usable but the first white blank space becomes unusable. Attempting to copy and paste more than one single character into the first white blank space results in the popping up of an error message. An error occurred. Please try again. Attempting to click convert when the second white blank space is empty, or when the second white blank space contains a negative sign results in the popping up of the same error message. The syntax of declaring an array of any swing component is similar to that of declaring an array of primitive types such as int and double. The first step is to type the name of the swing component, such as double. The second step is to type a pair of square brackets, which denotes an array type. The third step is to define a name for the array of the swing component. The fourth step is to type an assignment operator equals. The fifth step is to type the new keyword. The sixth step is to type the name of the same swing component. The seventh step is to type an integer bracketed by square brackets, and the final step is to type a semicolon. The syntax of adding an action listener to certain swing components such as button is similar to that of adding a key listener with a newly constructed key adapter to certain swing components such as double. The first step is to type either the defined name of the swing object, or the defined name of the array of the swing object followed by an array index of int value bracketed by square brackets. The second step is to invoke add action listener. The third step is to type an opening parenthesis, the new keyword, the name of this listener, a pair of parentheses, and an opening curly bracket. The fourth step is to type public void. The fifth step is to implement the inherited abstract method of action listener, namely action performed. The sixth step is to type an opening parenthesis, action event, and the default letter E that denotes an instance of action event. The final step is to type an opening curly bracket, an executable block of statements, two consecutive closing curly brackets, a closing parenthesis, and a semicolon. In contrast, the syntax of adding a document listener to certain Swing components such as text field is a little different. The first step is to type the defined name of a Swing text component. The second step is to invoke the getDocument method in the text component class. The third step is to invoke the addDocumentListening method in the document interface, whereas the rest of steps is similar to those of adding other listeners. Nevertheless, it is possible to omit the step of manually implementing any inherited abstract method by clicking a quick fix of Add Unimplemented Methods in the tooltip message that pops up when the mouse cursor is hovered over the red underlined type of listener after the new keyword, or the red underlined name of the public class, if it implements the listener interface in the beginning. In my opinion, this Java program is a completely functional offline tool for converting any single character to its corresponding Unicode decimal and vice versa. The code snippet of this program is relatively syntactically complex. In order to create this program, extensive knowledge of Swing components is necessary. Therefore, this is a good practice for intermediate programmers with some programming experience. The key points of this program are summarized below. Key points: hash refers to the user-defined name of the integer. Object refers to the user-defined name of the number format. Object refers to the user-defined name of the number formatter. Object refers to the user-defined name of the formatted text field. Object refers to the user-defined name of the text field. Object string.value of character.dechars hash. Number format equals number format. Get integer instance set grouping used false. Number formatter equals new. Number formatter set allows invalid false. Formatted text field equals new. Formatted text field. Get document. Add document listener. New document listener. Public void insert update document event t. Public void remove update document event t. Public void changed update document event t. Add key listener. New key adapter. Public void key typed key event t. If get text length greater than 0. e.consume. Import java.hot.color. Import java.hot.dimension. Import java.hot.font. Import java.hot.event.action. Event. Import java.odd.event.action listener. Import java.hot.event.keyAdapter. Import java.hot.event.key event. Import java.text.number format. Import javax.swing.button group. Import javax.swing.button. Import javax.swing.formatted text field. Import javax.swing.frame. Import javax.swing.global. Import javax.swing.joption pane. Import javax.swing.panel. Import javax.swing.radio button. Import javax.swing.text field. Import javax.swing.text pane. Import javax.swing.event.document event. Import javax.swing.event.document listener. Import javax.swing.text.number formatter. Public class Unicode Character Converter. Public static void main string, args, frame equals new frame, font for component equals new font times new Roman, font.plain, 23, font for text equals new font Microsoft GUI, font.plain, 25, button equals new button 2, label equals new label 4, panel equals new panel 2, radio button equals new radio button 2, button group equals new button group, text field equals new text field, number format equals number format. Get integer instance, number format. Subgrouping used false, number formatter equals new number formatter. Number formatter. Set allows invalid false, formatted text field equals new formatted text field. Number formatter, text pane equals new text pane 2, 4, and I equals 0 I to I plus, button I, equals new button I. Add action listener. New action listener, public void action performed action event t. If, e.get source equals button 0, text field. Set text, formatted text field. Set value null, 4, and I equals 0 I to I plus, text pane I. Set text, else, try, if, text field. Is enabled, string equals text field. Get text, 4, and I equals 0 I text string. Length I plus, integer, text string underscore to integer equals new integer text string. Length, text string underscore to integer I. equals text string dot code point add I string text string underscore to integer underscore to string equals text string underscore to integer I to string text pane 0. Set text string underscore to integer underscore to string, else if formatted text field dot is enabled. String ASCII underscore string equals formatted text field dot get text. Integer ASCII underscore string underscore to integer equals integer dot parse int ASCII underscore string. Text pane 1. Set text string dot value of character dot to chars ASCII underscore string underscore to integer. Catch. A legal argument exception X. Option pane dot show message dialog null. An error occurred. Please try again. Error. Option pane dot error underscore message. Button I. Set focusable false. Button I. Set font for component. Frame dot add button I. Radio button I equals new radio button. Radio button I. Add action listener new action listener. Public void action performed action event if get source equals radio button 0. Text field dot set enabled true. Formatted text field dot set enabled false. Else formatted text field dot set enabled true. Text field dot set enabled false. Radio button I. Set focusable false. Radio button I. Set font for component. Button group dot add radio button I. Text pane I equals new text pane. Text pane I. Set background color dot white underscore gray. Text pane I. Set editable false. Text pane I. Set font for text. Text pane I. Set preferred size new dimension 340. Panel I equals new panel. Panel I. Add radio button I. Frame dot add panel I. Button 0. Set bounds 100, 500, 260. Button 1. Set bounds 300, 500. 260. Button 0. Set text clear. Button 1. Set text convert. 4, and I equals 0 I for I plus plus. Label I equals new label. Label I. Set font for component. Frame dot add label I. Label 0. Set bounds 50, 100, 230. Label 1. Set bounds 50, 130, 260. Label 2. Set bounds 50, 340, 260. Label 3. Set bounds 50, 400, 230. Label 0. Set text character. Label 1. Set text Unicode, decimal. Label 2. Set text Unicode, decimal. Label 3. Set text character. Radio button 0. Set selected true. Radio button 0. Set text char to code. Radio button 1. Set text code to char. Text field dot get document. Add document listener new document listener. Add override. Public void insert update document event if text field dot get text. Length greater than 1. Option pane dot show message dialog null. An error occurred. Please try again. Error. Option pane dot error underscore message. Add override. Public void remove update document event Add override. Public void changed update document event Text field dot add key listener new key adapter. Public void key typed key event if text field dot get text. Length greater than 0. Consume. Text field dot set font for text. Text field dot set preferred size new dimension 340. Formatted text field dot add key listener new key adapter. Public void key typed key event if formatted text field dot get text. Length greater than 5. Consume. Formatted text field dot set enabled false. Formatted text field dot set font for text. Formatted text field dot set preferred size new dimension 340. Panel 0. Add text field. Panel 0. Add text pane 0. Panel 1. Add formatted text field. Panel 1. Add text pane 1. Panel 0. Set bounds 150, 50, 380, 200. Panel 1. Set bounds 150, 300, 380, 200. Frame dot set default close operations frame dot exit underscore on underscore close. Frame dot set layout null. Frame dot set resizable false. Frame dot set size 600. 600. Frame dot set title Unicode Character Converter. Frame dot set visible true.